unlock the power of AI with our Advancing AI Summit in Melbourne on the 3rd to the 4th of May. Join us for 2 days of in-depth discussions and insights from industry leaders on how Australian businesses can enhance their AI practices to achieve substantial ROI. Discover the crucial next steps for scaling productionized models and learning best practices for project prioritization, governance, model monitoring, and measuring business outcomes. We'll talk emerging developments and trends, AI optimization and impact, as well as a fresh take on critical and enduring challenges. Join us at Advancing AI at the Crown Promenade, Melbourne on the 3rd to the 4th of May and gain the knowledge you need to drive innovation and improve operations in your business. Don't miss out on this opportunity to unlock the full potential of AI.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project focus, data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au.
Hi, this is Felipe Flores. Welcome to Data Futurology. Today, we're going to be talking about the challenges in leadership and analytics, how to better communicate across the organization, how to better collaborate, how to show the good value, the value of the good work that the analytics team does across the organization, and how we can, better ways that we can do that in order to minimize the time that we spend on it, but get a lot of pack for punch out of the work that we do, a lot of visibility, a lot of recognition, a lot of impact, which is something that we're all very keen on improving. For that, we have a super special guest. She is a industry veteran, a very recognized leader in the space, and also one of the OG guests on Data Futurology. So Sandra Hogan, she was definitely the first 5 episodes. I've known her a long time, and I'm very excited to have her on the show again. Sandra, great to see you. How are you going today?
Thanks, Felipe. Nice to see you. I'm always embarrassed when people do introductions because, I have been around a long time. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but but great to see you, and thank you for having me on the podcast again. It's always a delight to listen to the podcast, but even better to be part of one. So thanks for having me.
Definitely, thank you. No, I think in your case, it's such a good. Your wealth of experience is amazing, and you've had such a variety of roles between very senior leadership in large corporates and in consulting, and you've led small teams and large teams and startups. And you've done kind of a bit of everything. But throughout your journey, you've continued to learn, and you've continued to have new challenges, you seek them out, you improve as a result, and then you take all those learnings for the next stage. And throughout the whole time as well, you share your learnings and you give back so much to the community. So that is all amazing. So it's one of it's kind of the profile of people that we want in the industry for a long time, to be doing new challenges, learning new things, and teaching along the way, sharing. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And I think going back to that, to your experience, I think it'd be interesting to maybe start by us kind of jointly reflecting on your journey and some of the lessons learned, particularly in this space around team analytics leadership and the management of the team, and discussing how teams can have better visibility across the organization, particularly in the value that they bring. Kind of like this is the space that I was hoping we can explore today. But maybe if we start with some some reflections of your career so far.
Yeah, thanks, Felipe. I have to say there has been, having done this kind of, I've been in the data analytics industry, since I was a little junior statistician, started off actually, working, very hardcore statistics, right? So working with the algorithms, we call it machine learning today, but it was a similar activity back then as well. But so much has changed in the last 25 to 30 years. It's quite remarkable, from the technology side in particular. So technology and data have changed so much in the space because of all the, advancements in cloud technologies, and obviously with, big data becoming just normal data and everything. It has really accelerated a lot of the things. And what I've observed is that people are becoming more and more reliant on data. I saw a lot of changes over the period in all my roles, whether I was, within a company or consulting, where, the demand for data skills has definitely just going up and up and up. And we see that in the market today. I mean, you've talked about this before, that there's just not enough people to meet the needs of businesses anymore around it. So we've got to find different ways to supplement the teams that they have working on this. And it's quite remarkable that, there was, with all this advancement and all this change, it's still amazing that I still also see some things that haven't improved enough and haven't changed in that time. Our teams work really hard, and they're all quite dedicated to their craft, and they work tirelessly to try and meet the demands of the business. And yet I still see the business lagging behind a little bit in how they really use data and really accept it. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. Fully digitally native companies that have started off from day one are quite different, right? Because they've had to use data to run their whole organisation business. They don't know any different. But if you come from traditional businesses, either retail or banking or even telco to a lot of extent, there's still a lot of things that, are the same as they were 20 years ago as they are today, So, and most of that's around people and process. If you look at those kind of 4 pillars around data, technology, people and process, the data and technology is absolutely taken off, but people and process is getting there, but it's still lagging behind really in what it can do to change and make use of the data and the technology, right? Because at the end of the day, we know that people are what drive the outcomes. Magic doesn't really happen.
Exactly. Yes. And it's so interesting that as we've been maturing as an industry, we've been kind of, at least from my perspective, I think we have been trialing different ways to organize our people and trialing different processes. Sometimes we look inward for the innovation and the change. Sometimes we look to other industries and we bring in models that people have externally, be it, for example, models that have worked in IT delivery, for example. Yeah. And we brought in things like Agile and obviously like CI/CD, but also sometimes we have like Scrum Masters and product owners or BAs and etc. So we kind of like bring in or things from sales or sometimes HR, where they have like a partnerships manager for different parts of the business and how that connects to the analytics team. So I think overall we've been definitely innovating and trying new processes and team structures. And I think overall we haven't settled on anything. And I can see different models in different teams and different organizations. And we see cycles of centralizing analytics teams and then decentralizing, federating analytics teams. So I think overall we're kind of still finding the most optimal way to work, but it's something that we're all yearning for. And what do you think about that journey, that process, and some of the motivators that are driving the continual seeking for change?
Look, I've always found analytics professionals to be very curious creatures, right? We want to learn, we want to know. Very few analytics people just sit around and do what they did yesterday, right? The whole reason why we're analysts is because we enjoy exploring data and looking for something new and identifying an opportunity to improve something, right, and make it better, right? That's the way we're wired generally. So I think it's quite good that we've been innovating and trying all these different things. I've seriously worked in every combination of your team you can imagine, right? Centralized, decentralized, hub and spoke and hub, consulting teams, outsourced teams, in-source teams. Like, I've done everything. And I have to say, there is no one model that's is the perfect model. So I think we have to accept that, it's a combination of things that have to come together to make something quite successful from a team perspective in particular, right? Because it doesn't matter sometimes how you're organised. It's other factors that come together. Do you have the right combination of skills in the team? Do you have enough trust in the team, right? Do people trust each other? And, people say, a team should trust each other, but sometimes it takes time. It's not automatic, and it's not just ourselves we have to trust and our team members. We have to also trust our stakeholders and the people that we collaborate with, and building that trust environment is difficult. Then overlay that with the maturity of an organisation in using data. They're digital native, they're already down that product development path, and they're already treating data like a product asset. Well, they've got quite a different culture and a different way they work with data. You go the other way and you've got, companies that are just starting to explore what they can do with data. And there's plenty of those out there that are, still grappling with reporting sometimes, and they will have a different need. So the organisation and how you structure your team is actually doesn't, there's no right or wrong answer. It's got to fit for what you're trying to achieve and what you think will be the best for everyone in the ecosystem that you work in, not just the data team. Although, we like to think we're the centre of the universe, we're often not.
What?
Yeah, I know. Who would have thought? How dare they not treat us like the centre of the world? And getting teams, to understand how they fit into the bigger picture is another thing I've observed is really important, but is not always done, effectively. So, if you're especially if you're in a large data team, right? Small teams generally are quite adaptable, and they out with the business, and they're talking to people, and they get a good feel for what's going on, and they understand. They're again curious, so they ask questions. But when you're in a massive organisation, and you're even if you're a team of say you're a team of 100, but there's like 20,000 or 30,000 people out there in the company, it's very hard to build those same connections and those same ways of working, because you've then got your own internal, you tend to become more internally focused because, there's 100 of you and you have to work together and coordinate. And then, it's managers and there's team leads and there's CDOs and there's all these levels and layers and people trying to coordinate. So then motivating a team and getting people to stay, focused on the outcomes and the benefits becomes actually harder. So, I think the smaller, medium-sized teams, I think, are ideal for that kind of, team motivation, keeping people involved enough, because otherwise you tend to become lost a bit in the size of the company and the size of your data team. I think people sometimes brag about, we have, thousands of data analysts across the whole world. Well, try keeping them all cohesively coordinated and on the same page. Must be quite a hard task to achieve.
Exactly. Yes, and I know of large companies where they for a stakeholder to get even a report, they have to fill in a form that then goes to a team for prioritization, then goes to another team for like a feasibility assessment, and then it goes to a backlog of another team. And it might be like 6 months before the stakeholder hears anything back or sees anything. Yeah. And obviously, as we know, with that lack of communication and direct communication and the integration, what comes back is often not what was needed. And obviously it's not very timely. No. But yeah, as you were saying, like definitely companies we have a difficult time organizing our teams, plugging them in the right points, gaining the trust. There's I think that there's a lot of things to unpick there. What do you see as the main hurdles or the main challenges that teams have when wanting to maximize their impact in the organization, wanting to show their value. Obviously, as you were saying, as analysts and data scientists, the team, we work so hard. We really believe in what we're doing, and sometimes we feel like we could be doing more impactful work and we could be adding more value. What do you see as the main challenges there?
Yeah, a big challenge around that is just, I suppose, aligning with the stakeholders on what it is that they've really got the problem about, and making sure that you're collaborating on that piece. It can be difficult, right? We're all busy. We're all in our different little worlds. We've all got, the business is busy trying to meet their goals and objectives. They've got problems. They go, oh, I'll get a piece of data will help me with that. And they're busy, right? So they quickly go type in a quick little request, whether it's a big form like you mentioned, or even if it's just an email, right, to someone, or a quick phone call. It's often, quite, vague and a little bit, the business leaders I've found, or business people I've found, often ask data team for a solution. They don't often talk about the problem in enough detail, right? They might say briefly, oh, yeah, we're off sales target. Can I have this report? So vaguely that they're off sales target, and then they ask for what they think is the answer to their problem, right? So, it's difficult to get stakeholders pinned down at that early stage of requesting something, to then identify more clearly what is the right piece of work we can do to actually give them the best outcome that they need. And when you put in processes, and we all put in processes because we want to try and protect the team, we want to manage the workload, and like that example you gave before of all those processes, they're put in place because, we know that the data team are going to get absolutely slammed with requests from everywhere if we don't put in our process. The problem is that process then drives this delay and these other problems, that then the stakeholders end up just getting frustrated, and they go, well, I don't know what you're working on. Why is it taking 6 months to get my work? I just asked for a report. Surely that can't take 6 months. So we actually create our own problems sometimes as data teams, because we want to try and manage that demand. And by doing that, we put blockers in place with our stakeholders. Then they decide, well, there's no point in spending a lot of time thinking about it. I'll just tell them what I want and what I think I want. And so you end up in this awful cycle of, huge backlogs, everyone's frustrated, the data team are working crazy hours, still not getting, they don't know if anything that they produced is actually making a difference, because they don't have time to go back to the stakeholders and check if the outcomes were achieved, because they've been shoved the next piece of work and said, no, now you work on this, and now you work on that. And so you end up in this really awful cycle of just getting things done. And unfortunately, the downside of that is that you start to lose motivation. The team starts to get despondent because they're like, well, all I do is work. You lose that connection. The business then doesn't really have good visibility and understanding of what the data team, what it takes for a report to be produced. I mean, we know that in itself can sometimes be a complex task. So, I've tried over the years lots of ways to try and address these challenges with stakeholders. In one of my roles at Telstra, actually, I got the team to sit with the campaign managers for 2 weeks. I said, okay, 3-4 of you go and spend 2 weeks. I don't want you at your desk. I want you to sit with the marketing campaign team. Just sit and see how they work. What do they do? How do they do it? Why do they do it? And they spent 2 weeks literally shadowing all the campaign managers and finding out what do they do. And I said, just ask questions. Don't offer solutions. Pretend you're not a data person. Pretend you're there to learn about marketing, how to do campaigns, and just sit there. And when they came back and when requests started to come in, they had a completely different approach and a different way of looking at it, because now they understood the jobs that the marketing guys did. And now they understood where they fitted, where we could fit in as a data team into that approach. And I've tried that before at other places too. And, I work for an infrastructure services company, out in the field staff doing stuff. It's really hard to know how they work, but we can't build solutions with data if we don't understand how they work today, right? So, that's a really good way to do it, but it takes time. And again, if you're continually slammed with work and you're being given queue after queue, then when do you find time to go and sit with your stakeholders and really learn about their world You know, you don't have to become an expert in what they do, but you need to understand enough about how they work. Because one thing that I will say that I've learned through my career is there's no point doing data and analytics for something if it's not going to change something, right? If you're not changing something, then you are honestly wasting your time. And it sounds really harsh, but at the end of the day, if you don't, it's about change management and changing something. And it might be a minor change or it might be a big change, but there's a change that has to happen. And if you're asking me to make a change, but you don't give me any information, or I don't feel like you understand my world and what I go through, then why would I change for you? So I think, as data people, we need to, put ourselves in our customers or our stakeholders' shoes and say, well, what am I actually asking you to do? So, an example I've given often is when I worked at the infrastructure services company, we wanted to automate quality assurance, right? So the field staff were finishing their work. So they were a tradie of some type. They were taking a photo of their work. They were sending it in and someone was assessing, did they meet all the standards, right? So say it's electrical work, you have to have the cables, you have to have the little stickers that say warning stickers and all these things. And there was someone manually reviewing all of them. We were smart. We said, hey, we can automate that with, some, computer vision. We can train the algorithm to detect and give a little tick, and we could do it instantly, right? So we started to do work on it. We tested the algorithms. We did the feasibility. It worked. What we didn't do is we didn't spend enough time with the tradies and the field staff to understand, how do they take the photos? Are they going to be able to feed it in? Are they going to be able to then, are they connected to the internet to even send the image instantly to be validated before you sent back? Like, we didn't think of all those little things around the solution. We just thought, oh my God, we can build these cool algorithms that'll and we had huge success. We had like 98% accuracy on 4 or 5 different QA checks. So we had really good models, but you know what? It never got implemented because, number one, we didn't prime up the customer enough to say, okay, we're going to replace people with an algorithm, but this is the benefit. We didn't bring them on the journey. We didn't show them along the way what we were doing. We didn't let them test the algorithms themselves to show that they were comfortable. We kind of built it in a vacuum and then didn't involve them enough. And unfortunately, when it came to the crunch of saying, well, let's put it out there, they backed away. Like, they just didn't do it. And there was like 3 or 4 months worth of work. It was a feasibility. So, but even then, these things take time. And so even when you think you're doing the right thing, right? So this is an example where we did try and engage and it still fell short of being implemented. And so that's quite frustrating for everyone. And then, you kind of go, well, where's the benefit then? And you've kind of lost, you've lost motivation.
Exactly. Because as you said, if there's no change that happens as a result of the analytics work, then there is effectively no value that is captured from the work, from the effort. I think an approach of build it and they will come is something that we've all done in our careers at some point. But in that particular example, you had really honed in to a pain point, a problem that they had, and it was, it had all of the right intent to say, hey, let's kind of like go away and solve this problem for them, and come with a solution. And it highlights the importance of alignment from the start. That I'm sure that in that case, from the business side, they were almost saying or thinking, oh, I wish that we were engaged from the beginning and throughout. And I think that in other examples, it's the same for analytics teams, that actually, as you were saying earlier, that when a request comes from business to say, we're behind on sales, give me this report, the analytics team feels, hey, I wish we were engaged earlier, because we could have been with you through the recognition of the problem, the ideation and brainstorming of possibilities and alternatives, and deciding which way to go, and then so it's kind of we both sides, we want greater alignment and to work in sync. Sometimes there's a time pressure that means that we try to sort of separate each other to deliver the work. But it's definitely a pain that is prevalent in all of the industry. And it essentially it really hurts us. It really hurts the motivation of the teams, the output, the value that we can create, because we have all the right intentions, all the right capabilities, we have the knowledge, and if we collaborate, we can be more than the sum of our parts. And sometimes it's difficult to make that click on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Look, it is difficult, right? Because, as I said, it's not, if it was an easy problem to solve, we would have solved it, right? Because, and you've also got the different types of teams and the way we like to work, right? So, I had to say working with marketing is hard for an analyst, right? Because we're very different, right? Marketing people are extroverts. Well, I'm generalizing here, but they're generally more outgoing, more, interactive. As data people, we are generally, not always, but we generally can be, a bit more introverted. We need our quiet time. We need time to think and ponder. But I think if we just sort of, if I think of what would help everyone sort of kind of work together, it's that communication, it's that talking more about the problem, it's that upfront, trying to get engaged as early as possible, and then keeping that engagement going. So I think we're too quick to try and find a solution as well, right? We want to get to the answer quickly because we're problem solvers, which is a great trait to have. But I'm a big fan of test and learn, right? I think you need to, do it. And even, these feasibilities are important, but you need to explain to the business and talk them through and discuss with them why it's important. Because I think what happens is we just decide that's what we want to do, but we haven't explained enough about them. So it's that two-way, trust that's going to be developed and just naturally will grow. You can't force trust on people, but the closer you work together, and iterate on solutions and try and work together, I think we'll get a better outcome both ways, because the business will also understand a bit more about what involved in working with data and getting the outcomes. And at the same time, the data team and the analytics and the data science teams will also understand more about how the business works and what their challenges are. Because, if for example, sales are down, there could be multiple reasons for that, right? And, we don't want to guess. It's best to have that conversation, have the chat. So I think it goes both ways. But as analysts and as data science people, I think we need to build the bridge first. There's always this thing, the business tell me what the problem is. Well, you need to go and ask them and try and, be curious and be inquisitive. I've tried to do that many times and said to my team, go and talk to them. They get shy sometimes and they go, I don't want to. And I'm like, well, let's go together. We'll both go to the stakeholders and we'll ask them together and explain a bit more. And I think people are reasonable. And what I see another change in the whole data is because businesses are now realizing the value more and more of being data-driven and using data to solve problems, I think the business is going to start to actually want to be more curious about how to use the data. And I think they will naturally start to ask more questions. And so we should embrace that as a data analytics community and use that to actually drive that collaboration up front. Because I think the more that you collaborate up front, the better the execution and the delivery will be, right? That we're really good at executing and delivery. What we're not good at is that upfront really talking about, what's the problem? What could be a solution? What could we test? What's a little piece we can take off to try? I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, a report's a report. So I'm not talking about kind of reporting. I'm talking about more complex things here. We need to iterate on problems. We need to talk about the benefits more, as a group. And I think that collaboration is going to be the next stage of evolution between, the business and the data teams is, getting better at, not that we're not good at it and not that everyone is, not trying, but we need to find ways to really accelerate that collaboration between our teams, become more open around, explaining and discussing what are the benefits. And then at the end of the process, talking again about, well, how did it work? What worked well? I think we tend to close off a project and just move on. Yep. But if you think of it like a product development and product, it doesn't end. Like When does a product ever stop? When does Facebook ever stop looking at new ways of working? When does any of those, right? Everyone always wants to do more. So I think as analytics people, we need to start thinking of our work as not a start and an end. You know, it's something that evolves over time. And I think if we take that mindset, I'm hoping, you know, using that plus all our knowledge, experience, and, you know, and some ways, clever ways to try and make that easy for us, that hopefully that will then give us that chance to, just become more ingrained in the business, and then more providing workable solutions that can work better. And change then becomes easier too, right? Once it's not as hard to make the change once you've been working together over multiple pieces of work and you're seeing your work as a product, not as a start and end. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, I totally agree. And I think that in the while working in a project or in a product, that I think it's important to recognize that we will go in waves oscillating between a kind of like a planning, design, scope, time time frame, and then to a delivery time frame. And then sometimes what starts to break down some of the communications is that when we're in delivery and execution, that we tend to kind of work in separate and then come into contact every now and again. And then there's sometimes like things that are presented as little tweaks, change this little thing, this little thing, this little thing, but it's actually a new problem area that needs to be discussed in a scoping, planning, brainstorming framework or mindset, I guess, before kind of kicking off the next execution. And so I think realizing that we need to change the mode of operation and kind of like piecemeal on both sides, because you don't want to get stuck on either side because you're not delivering anything, but the changing between, I think, is important. I love what you mentioned about the essentially the retrospectives and saying like, what did we learn out of this? What could have gone better? How do we improve? I think that's really good. And I think any projects where we can have something that and you described it like as working with the business on the deliverable. And I think the working with is like having something that we can both point at and talk about. And I think having that as early as possible is key and super helpful. And like in a report, you could have hand-drawn charts to say like, would this solve the problem? Would this type of analysis help? And you also get the hypotheses in people's minds. Say like, what do you think, business? What do you think this chart would look like? And they're like, oh, well, I think we'd have a lot of customers in this area, not so many in this area. The ones over here would be larger. And then once you bring the data, you're immediately proving or disproving the hypothesis and getting some learning there. So it's tough to align and be in sync, and then prove and track the value that the analytics teams, particularly when we're spread thin across so many stakeholders and so many different areas. What do you think about that space in terms of trying to serve the whole organization and then being in sync with different parts, showing the value to different parts, maximizing our impact? What have you seen in that space?
It's definitely something that I've observed through all of my career is, and I've sorted out myself personally because I'm always curious as to the so what. That's kind of been me the whole time. I'm actually was always less interested in the tools I was using. It was more about what are we doing with this piece of data, because that's just me. But I think what I'm seeing now is that when I talk to CDOs either through my consulting or now my startup, I find CDOs are now being asked to actually provide almost evidence of what benefits they've delivered, right? I've heard it over and over. It's no longer, it was a nice to have. I was at Telstra, we used to do it because it was a nice to have, but now I think it's becoming more, no, you need to show me how you've contributed to the business. So this is where I think that we need to start to come up with clever, tools and processes to support that, so that makes it easy for us, because it is difficult. So my first tip is, don't try and do it 100% of the work you do, because you will fail dismally. It's too much, right? You need to pick the areas where you go, okay, these are the big strategic things, or these are the pieces of work that I actually think really make a difference to the business, and focus in on them. Even if it's 20 or 30% of what you do, it's going to actually be a hell of a lot more than what you're going to show otherwise, which is almost nothing, right? Because then the difference is that you're as a leader, you hone in on that and you go, okay, I'm going to spend more time now upfront benefit discussion. So identification is the first bit up front, because you want to really sit down and talk about it and come up with it. And I find that often stakeholders don't know how to measure it. So it's my job to come to them with options and things to do it. They could be hard measures, there could be soft measures. It actually doesn't matter. I find that if I start with them, what are your business objectives? So go back, understand what drives that stakeholders area. What are the sort of things that they care about and they're being measured? Because if you can align your work, to what they're being measured on, it's much easier to then draw that, to create the measures and determine what the benefit is, whether it's, a hard measure or not. I believe everything could be turned into a hard measure. I've not come across anything yet that I haven't been able to make up or postulate a potential measure. Whether the data exists is another matter, but everything is measurable. You've just got to think sometimes a bit off center about how to measure it. But I find that if we have that enough discussion up front and really try and think about what the measures would be, it's like putting a stake in the ground and saying, okay, that's what I think it is. Then you break it down, and that might be when you apply agile methods and you're running test and learn on a few things. And what I find is that people sometimes put that stake in the ground at the start, but then they walk away and they don't come back to it. So, my second bit of advice is, while you've picked your subsets, you have to frequently remeasure, revisit the measures and what they're doing, right? As you're learning, you're always going back with your customer and your stakeholder and going, okay, I've learnt this. I thought we were heading in this direction and it's going to give us 20% improvement. But you know what? Now that we've run that test, I actually think we can get more, but we have to do it slightly differently. And so you're constantly having those conversations and you're keeping track of them. That's the other bit that's difficult. There's no, and don't get me wrong, everyone uses Jira and it's got great attributes, but it doesn't let you track these kind of bigger test and learn and iterations. It's not designed for collaboration at that level of engaging and testing and learning and changing direction, right? It's great for what it does, but it doesn't allow you to do that. I've tried all the tools, right? Don't get me wrong. I've tried everything to try and, measure it. You've got to have the context around it too. You can't just have a generic, communication tool or a Trello board, because it doesn't allow you enough tying back to the context. Where was it? What was it? How do I keep that conversation going? Because as we know, some projects can be done in 2 or 4 weeks and some of them go on, and if we're going to take the product approach, it actually never ends. You might spin off another project or start another piece of work that's connected to it, but it never really ends, right? So how do you know what you've tried before, what has worked? How do you know what you've measured? Did it make an impact? And it's that gathering of that information and all those little trials and tests that you have to kind of bring together and then look at them over periods of time to do that measuring. And then you can be confident that what you've got in place will actually give you the measure that you want at the end. And then you generally, if you know it's not going to work, you're not going to continue that path anyway, right? So by the time you get to the end, you're confident that your outcome will be achieved. And then you've got actually evidence of it, because now you have, collected it along the way, and you can then say, and often when I've delivered benefits, I've delivered them with a stakeholder. So, head of marketing, we partnered together, we share those benefits. Because I didn't execute the campaign, or the team didn't, but we provided the models and all the solution was all driven from the data and all the modeling, but they wrote the campaign and they executed it. So, on my own, I've never achieved anything as a CDO. I've done it with a team and with a stakeholder. So I think it's the other thing is making sure that the stakeholders are there at the end to help you measure it and will back you up when you say we've delivered, $10 million of benefits. They also need to go, yes, I agree with that because this is what we did as a business and this is where it came from.
Yes.
So it's not easy to do though, Felipe. I say it very easily, but it's really hard to do that end bit in particular.
Yes. One kind of catchphrase that helped me keep that in mind was a good deal has many parents. Or like a success story has many parents in the organization. And I remember one of my bosses described it as like, get the conga line going. Like if this is
that's great. I love that.
If this is beneficial to the organization, just get the conga line going.
I love it. I might steal that one. That's a good one. Get the conga line go because it's a team effort and all of this stuff. I think benefits are not given enough clout. People give it lip service, but I think if you want to really feel that you've contributed, I think you have to learn to measure it and you have to work out ways to do it. And also it builds trust, right? Can you imagine if you've worked with a stakeholder and you've shown that you've delivered benefits, they're going to keep coming back and wanting to work that way with you. Yeah. So, your relationship changes straight away because you're no longer an order taker. Now you're a collaborator, you're a partner, you work together. And so I think it's just a perfect win-win for everyone. It's just not the natural way that we're working at the moment,
Correct. And it creates such closeness within the teams, including the business side, because you like jointly have created this value that then you can, kind of like sit back and admire, be like, this is what we did together. And it just brings that closeness. The other really interesting thing that you mentioned is, and that I agree, that the existing tools that we have are very focused on the delivery of the work, and they're quite at a granular level. And all of the kind of like the metadata, like the information about the context, the strategy, the prioritization, and the value, it all has to sit outside, and it sits kind of like mostly on people's heads. It'll sit in PowerPoint presentations. It might sit on like a Confluence or some documents, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like separate and disjointed from the delivery side. And it makes the delivery teams feel like they don't really see or how their work and their efforts line up to their organizational strategy, to their priorities, to the value of the organization. So that it makes them feel disconnected, which obviously decreases engagement. And I think that's a critical gap that and something that I know that myself and definitely my teams, we spend a little time trying to communicate that value back to the business, capture it in the first place, have a place where we can collaborate with the business on those that high level strategy, that capture of value, and it at the moment it feels like a very manual process to do and to keep up. While the delivery side, it feels like it has more software help in to be able to do that well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've certainly, over the many years, I've tried lots of different ways to deal with that sort of thing. Because, a stakeholder doesn't, whether they're an executive or even, lower down the company, they're not going to want to, look at, all the different activities that are captured in some of the delivery tools. And we need them, right? It's really important. We want to track and monitor and make sure. But at the end of the day, they want to know, did you achieve the goals? Is it going to help my business, benefit? And what are the benefits? Is it going to help me achieve my goals, right? So I agree with you that that's something that I've used spreadsheets before, PowerPoint. I hate, not a fan of, but, love-hate relationship with PowerPoint. Yeah. But, you try and do it. But the problem is all of that stuff gets lost. The corporate knowledge of all that disappears when a person goes, right? Because PowerPoint is very difficult to search through and look at. Confluence becomes, again, similar thing, very heavy. And so the tools that are available at the moment have not been purpose-built for this, right? They've been built for other things and we're adapting them because we know there's a need for them. But I've not found anything available out there that has made those pain points and that problem for me of, understanding and keeping a track of everything, worked well. It doesn't have to be everything. Again, there's a piece of your work that's BAU and you've always just got to do it. There's no, point about that. It's more those pieces of work that are going to make, change the organisation's direction, that are trying to drive change. Those ones are the ones that we need to have all together in one spot that we can learn from as well, right? Imagine if you could see the journey of a particular initiative and something you've tried that didn't work, and you've got a record of that in an application that you can easily go back to and go, oh, actually, let me have a quick look. Yeah, we've tried that before. This is what happened. Okay, what if we do it a little bit differently? How many times have you worked in a company where or come in and you've gone, oh my God, we're doing that again?
Yeah. It's like, this is the fourth time we're trying this.
Single customer view. That's a favourite one of mine. How many times has every big company done single customer view projects? Every time.
Yeah, I totally agree that being able to see the split between tactical work, BAU work, strategic work, risk-related work, being able to see the amount of time spent on those different camps, and then also being able to see what's kind of like a low effort or quick win versus like something that needs a higher lift in order to deliver, because then you can make informed decisions around the trade-off. And you might have some things that are, strategic, that might be a small lift and that you should totally prioritize. But if you're stuck in the weeds on tactical work or BAU work, then it's hard to recognize that a small effort in a different area could yield a little bigger results. Knowing that then obviously you have to come back and do some more tactical BAU. So I know that at the moment you are wanting to talk to people that are having these challenges, that are facing, that are grappling with these issues. I think it's something that affects a lot of leaders. But how can people get in touch if they want to pick your brain, if you want to share their their war stories or their successes? How could people get in touch?
I mean, that is actually the focus of the startup that I'm a co-founder of, called Amperfii. So we really want to hear from people. We want to know, how have people found these problems around, engaging with stakeholders, providing visibility of work, how are we defining value and benefits to the business in particular, right? That's been something of my, a theme of my career for a while now. So this company that we've created we're building software to try and help with that problem, right? And solve that pain, or support, I should say. I don't know if we'll ever solve it because it's, it can be quite people, but we'll definitely looking to provide support. How do we make it easier? How do we make it something that can be just put into how you work and not have to be a separate activity that you have to manually do? So, look, you can find me on LinkedIn quite easily. I'm very open to people sending me messages. I really want to talk to as many people I can. We're also going to be at the Data Futurology conference, in Melbourne on the 3rd and 4th of May. Advancing AI. So please come and see me there. We'll have a stand there and we want to talk to as many people as we can and get some feedback. And then, of course, our website, amperfii.com, if you want to know a bit more about what we're doing in this area. But very keen to people just directly reach out and shoot me a note in LinkedIn. And I'm very open to taking requests from people that are in this space and who want to talk about it. Because I think as a community, we can solve this problem to a point where it makes it easy for us, right? So we don't have to spend so much time rallying around. And I know we want to work with stakeholders. I know we want to collaborate. I know we don't want to do it in a vacuum. So we've just got to make it easier now for us to enable that.
Yeah. And I got to say that if, for anyone listening, that if you're a person that has felt pain about being able to highlight the value of the analytics team, and has had issues aligning to the business in an ongoing manner, having good collaboration across the organization, and being able to show the impact of the hard work that the analytics team does. If you've faced any of those challenges now or in the past, I highly encourage you to reach out to Sandra. I've had a sneak peek to what they've been working on, and I can tell you, it's so far it's really hitting the nail on the head, and they're looking to improve it as a result of that community engagement. So it's something that almost feels built by the community for the community. And it's only going to get better as we pour more of our experiences into the development of this product. So I highly encourage you to reach out and share your pain points, your war stories, and your successes, because then it's something that we're all going to jointly benefit from. And Sandra, thank you so much for coming to share your learnings and all of the thinking and advancement that you've been making, and sharing that with the community is always greatly appreciated. And love your work, and please can keep going. And I'm very excited to see where these discussions will take you guys.
Right. Thanks, Felipe. Thank you for having me, and hope to hear from everyone soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel, so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.